Ethan Cross had seen enough of the galaxy's dead worlds to know the silence of this one was unnatural. The planet, a jagged sphere of ice and snow, reflected the pale light of a distant sun like a frozen mirror. His boots crunched through the brittle surface as he trudged forward, rifle slung over his shoulder, scanning the horizon. He wasn't on a leisurely survey mission, he was looking for signs of life, any trace of what might have survived the last interstellar conflict. But life was supposed to be impossible here. The temperature plummeted far below what even the hardiest human suits could tolerate for long. The wind cut through the thick layers of his armor like blades. And yet, something felt wrong. It started as a faint vibration underfoot, subtle enough that most would have ignored it. But Ethan's instincts were honed by years in war zones across the galaxy. He froze, hand tightening on his rifle. The vibrations intensified, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat trapped beneath the ice. He knelt, pressing his gloved fingers against the frozen ground. The pulses were real. Something alive was down there. Hello? His voice sounded small against the vast, empty plain. If anyone's down there, the wind swallowed his words. There was no response, only a low, vibrating hum that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He started digging. At first, he used the edge of his boot, scraping away the top layer of ice. Then he pulled out a thermal drill from his pack, its blade spinning and biting into the frozen crust. Hours seemed to pass as he worked methodically, sweat freezing on his forehead. And then he saw it, the first glimpse of something enormous trapped beneath the ice. It was a claw. Not a human hand, not any creature he recognized from military archives, a claw the size of a small vehicle, tipped with talons that glinted like shards of black crystal. Ethan staggered back, a shiver running down his spine. The ice around it pulsed faintly, as if the creature beneath were breathing, straining to break free. He couldn't tear his eyes away. The claw twitched again, and then a massive eye opened beneath the frozen surface. It was a pale, icy blue, with a depth that made Ethan feel like he was staring into a mind older than any human history. The dragon, it was alive. Ethan's heart pounded. Alien dragons were thought to be extinct for thousands of years, wiped out in battles that spanned entire star systems. Legends spoke of their intelligence, their near-mythical power, but no one had seen one in centuries, until now. And these weren't just preserved skeletons or fossilized remains. They were alive, shivering, trapped in a frozen tomb of their own making, or perhaps someone else's. Then the pleading began. At first, it was subtle, almost indistinguishable from the sound of the wind. But then Ethan heard it clearly, a series of low, guttural tones that resonated in his chest. They were calling to him. The sound carried intelligence, urgency, desperation. Ethan's fingers brushed against the ice as he tried to decipher what it meant. The more he listened, the more he realized the dragons weren't attacking, weren't trying to harm him. They were begging. Begging for help. His mind raced. How could he help them? What could a lone human veteran do for creatures this massive, this powerful? And why them? Why now, after all these centuries of silence? A sudden crack startled him. One of the dragons moved slightly, pushing its massive head against the ice. The sound of cracking echoed across the barren plain, a deafening roar that shook the very ground. Ethan stumbled back, heart racing, realizing the creature's strength even in its frozen state. The dragon's eye met his, and in that moment, Ethan felt a connection that defied explanation. He could sense the fear, the confusion, the sheer will to survive. This isn't just survival, he whispered to himself. They're trying to tell me something. He crouched closer, cautiously, hands extended. His gloves barely touched the ice, but the warmth of his touch seemed to stir the dragon. Its breath, trapped within the frozen tomb, condensed in clouds that shimmered like misty fire. Ethan shivered, not just from the cold, but from the weight of the discovery. As night fell, the pale sun dipping below the icy horizon, Ethan realized he wasn't alone in more ways than one. These dragons, ancient and powerful, had chosen him. Chosen him to witness their plight, perhaps even to intervene. But what awaited him beneath the ice? What secrets had been frozen alongside these creatures? Ethan knew one thing. This mission was no longer about exploration or reconnaissance. It was about survival, understanding, and something far bigger than himself. Something that could change everything humanity thought it knew about the galaxy. He took a deep breath, feeling the cold bite at his lungs, and prepared for what was coming next. The frozen plea of the alien dragons had been heard. And now, he had to answer. The wind had died down by the time Ethan Cross set up his portable thermal generator. The faint glow from its coils cast jagged shadows across the ice, illuminating the massive forms trapped beneath. His heart still pounded from the sight of the dragon's claw, but now a deeper, gnawing curiosity had taken over. He had to know what he was dealing with. Ethan adjusted the thermal drill, lowering it carefully toward the frozen mass. Each rotation hummed a tense note in the otherwise silent wasteland. The ice around the dragons was unlike anything he had ever seen, its structure almost organic, glimmering with faint streaks of turquoise light, like veins carrying some frozen energy. It wasn't natural. Someone, or something, had preserved these creatures deliberately. Then, a sudden tremor ran through the ice. Ethan froze. The claw twitched again, this time with a slow, deliberate movement. A shiver ran down his spine. This was no random reaction. The dragon beneath the ice was aware. It was alive, and it was conscious. "Okay," Ethan muttered, speaking aloud even though no one was there to hear him. "You're alive, and I guess you're thinking." He pressed his palm against the ice near the claw. A faint warmth radiated back, not enough to melt it, but enough to feel like a pulse. The dragon was responding to him. A thrill of fear mixed with awe coursed through Ethan. He had faced countless alien life forms in the war zones of far-flung systems, but never anything like this. Never something that seemed to be reaching out for understanding. And then he heard it clearly, the first real voice. Not a sound from the throat or mouth, but inside his head, unmistakable and deliberate. "Help us." Ethan staggered back, hand clutching his helmet. His eyes darted around, searching for a speaker. There was no one. He pressed his helmet closer to his ears, convinced the cold was making him hallucinate. "Help us." It was real. He could feel the urgency, the raw emotion. Not words exactly, but meaning, intentions, even fear. The dragon was trying to communicate. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't even know how I can help." His voice cracked in the freezing air. The dragon's next thought came faster, insistent. "Free us, or the galaxy dies." The words, or concepts, hit him like a bullet. "The galaxy dies?" Ethan echoed, disbelief twisting his features. But the tone carried no malice, only warning. He looked at the ice, at the claw that twitched like a warning bell, and realized these dragons weren't just survivors. They were guardians. Hours passed as he worked cautiously, using a combination of drills and heat pulses to chip away the ice around the nearest dragon's head. Each inch revealed more of the creature, scales shimmering like fractured crystal, eyes vast and intelligent, and a snout lined with teeth that could crush a human in a single bite. And yet, the dragon did not attack. It simply observed, eyes fixed on him, assessing, trusting. Why are you frozen?" Ethan asked aloud. The telepathic response was almost immediate, stronger this time. "To protect the prison." "The prison?" he repeated, frowning. The dragon's meaning was opaque, tantalizing, and terrifying all at once. He felt a ripple of images wash through his mind, glimpses of blazing stars, shadows of colossal structures, weapons of unimaginable power, and dragons locking themselves into ice, not in defeat, but in choice. A sudden roar of wind tore across the icy plain, and Ethan stumbled. He turned to see the other dragons stirring beneath the ice. Massive wings shifted, scraping against the frozen crust with a sound like tearing metal. The air vibrated with energy. He realized the dragons weren't just alive, they were awakening, slowly, deliberately, reacting to his presence and his attempts to free them. One dragon, larger than the rest, raised its head fully. Its eyes locked with Ethan's, and in that instant, the world narrowed to just the two of them. He could feel its mind probing, testing, trying to gauge his intentions. Fear, caution, hope, it was all there. And then, almost like a whisper, a command. "You must act quickly." Ethan's stomach churned. Act quickly? What exactly did that mean? What threat could be approaching that even these ancient guardians feared? The dragons had been frozen for millennia, long enough to survive entire wars, empires, and cosmic upheavals. Whatever it was, it had to be worse than anything humanity had ever faced. He hesitated, torn between awe and fear. One wrong move could kill him, or worse, awaken something even deadlier than the dragons themselves. Yet he couldn't ignore their plea. The connection he felt was real, visceral, and impossible to deny. The largest dragon exhaled, and the frost around its mouth shimmered in the dim light. Images flickered through Ethan's mind, visions of a cosmic weapon, capable of annihilating star systems, sealed away by dragons who had sacrificed their freedom to protect the galaxy. And now, after centuries, the seal was weakening. Ethan stepped back, a cold sweat running down his spine. The dragons weren't just trapped, they were warning him. They had chosen him to understand, to act, and possibly to make choices that could save or doom the universe. He clenched his fists. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was unlike anything. The stakes were no longer personal, no longer just survival. The fate of countless worlds rested on what he would do next. And deep in the frozen expanse, the dragons waited, alive and sentient, their eyes locked on him, silently begging for a human to rise to a challenge that even they could not face alone. Ethan Cross had spent the last several hours chipping away at the ice, careful not to provoke the dragons. But now, as the pale alien light of the distant sun faded behind jagged peaks, he realized something even more alarming. The dragons weren't just trying to survive. They were trying to warn him. The largest dragon, its scales shimmering like fractured ice, lifted its massive head fully above the thawing crust. Its eyes, deep pools of sapphire and silver, seemed to pierce into Ethan's mind. And then the message came, not a voice, not sound, but thought itself. They are coming. Ethan staggered backward. What is coming? He asked aloud, his voice trembling. But the dragon didn't answer in words. It shared visions, fleeting and terrifying. Ethan saw massive ships, dark as void, hurtling across the stars. He saw worlds reduced to molten fragments, civilizations wiped out in a heartbeat. And he saw a shadow, a force older than the dragons themselves, cold, relentless, and utterly merciless. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed. I fought a lot of enemies, he muttered, voice barely audible over the wind. But nothing like this. The dragon's eyes seemed to soften. Its mind reached out again, clearer this time. You are chosen to act, or all is lost. Ethan's mind raced. Chosen? Why him? He was a veteran, yes, trained in combat and survival, but he wasn't a savior. And yet, staring into the dragon's gaze, he felt a pull he couldn't explain, a sense of destiny, of urgency. Then came the warning, sharp and undeniable. The prison weakens. The weapon awakens. If it is released, countless worlds will burn. Only we, and you, can stop it. Ethan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He remembered the visions from the ice, vast alien machines, energy radiating like dying stars, a force that even the dragons had feared enough to entomb themselves in ice for millennia. The dragons were guardians, yes, but not just of themselves. They were guardians of something humanity had no right to possess, something that could annihilate entire civilizations in moments. He glanced at the other dragons, smaller but no less imposing, their eyes locked on him with unspoken questions. Each beat of their frozen hearts seemed to echo the stakes, act, or fail. What do you want me to do? Ethan whispered, more to himself than to the dragons. A shiver of energy pulsed through the ice, as if the dragon sensed his hesitation. The images in his mind sharpened. He saw the cosmic weapon fully, an enormous construct, built eons ago by an unknown civilization, capable of obliterating entire star systems. The dragons had imprisoned it, sacrificing themselves to hold it in stasis. But now, something, or someone, was breaking the seals. The cosmic threat approaches. You must awaken us fully, or the prison will fall. Ethan's stomach tightened. Awaken the dragons? He thought of the tales he'd heard as a child, of the destructive power of these creatures. One misstep, one moment of misjudgment, and the dragons could destroy him, or worse, accidentally trigger the weapon themselves. And yet, if he did nothing, the entire galaxy might perish. He looked at the ice, at the massive claw he had first uncovered, now fully revealed, moving slightly as if testing the air. A low hum emanated from the frozen dragons, a vibration that seemed to resonate with the very core of his being. The dragons weren't threatening him, they were pleading, instructing, begging him to act before it was too late. Ethan swallowed hard. Memories of his military life flashed through his mind. Impossible odds, desperate missions, the weight of command, decisions that had cost lives. This was another impossible mission, but unlike anything he had faced. There were no allies nearby, no reinforcements. This was him, the dragons, and the fate of the galaxy. You must trust us. The largest dragon extended its massive head closer to the surface of the ice. Ethan felt a wave of warmth, not physical, but emotional. The dragon wanted him to understand that their power could be controlled, guided, but only if he acted with resolve and intelligence. Hesitation could mean catastrophe. A gust of wind tore across the icy plains, carrying with it the faint scent of something metallic, almost burning. Ethan looked toward the horizon, imagining the approaching threat, its scale almost beyond comprehension. If the dragon's warnings were accurate, the universe itself was on a countdown. Ethan exhaled slowly. Fear was still there, sharp and biting, but now mingled with resolve. He had faced impossible odds before, survived situations that should have killed him, and adapted when the unexpected came crashing down. And now, in the silence of this frozen world, he realized what he had to do. He placed his hands on the ice once more, directly above the dragon's chest. Its pulse resonated with his own. The creature's energy hummed beneath his gloves. And then, for the first time, Ethan Cross understood the magnitude of the decision before him: awaken the dragons fully and confront the coming threat, or do nothing and let the galaxy burn. The choice was his. And for the first time in his life, he felt the full weight of being chosen, not as a soldier, not as a veteran, but as the only living link between ancient guardians and a cosmic threat the universe had long forgotten. The frozen dragons waited, their eyes burning with silent urgency. And Ethan Cross, veteran of countless wars, knew that his next action would either save or doom everything. Ethan Cross had always prided himself on staying calm in impossible situations. Wars, ambushes, and cosmic disasters had taught him how to think on his feet, but nothing, could have prepared him for what he was about to uncover. As the largest dragon shifted beneath the thawing ice, Ethan noticed something he had missed before: a faint metallic glint embedded within the frozen ground beneath them. His breath hitched. The ice was not just a prison for the dragons, it was a vault. A tomb of alien design, layered with intricate carvings that pulsed faintly, as if alive. He knelt closer, brushing away snow and frost. Symbols, incomprehensible to any human language, covered the surface: circuits, patterns, and strange glyphs that seemed to hum in resonance with the dragon's very being. The ice was not natural. Someone, or something, had preserved them here, and it was far older than humanity itself. As he chipped away carefully, a section of ice fractured, revealing what lay beneath: a vast, metallic chamber, its walls etched with more glyphs, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. Ethan felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. The dragon's energy thrummed in tandem with the chamber, as if they were part of it, or it part of them. He stepped inside the chamber, awestruck. The scale of the structure was unlike anything he had ever imagined. It wasn't just a vault, it was a containment facility, a prison for something far beyond comprehension. And at its center, resting in a cradle of alien technology, was a weapon. Ethan froze. His military training kicked in, and yet even his most battle-hardened instincts failed him. The weapon was colossal, a crystalline superstructure that pulsed with raw energy, radiating a force that made the very air hum and vibrate. He could sense its potential, a terrifying scale of destruction capable of erasing star systems in seconds. The dragons stirred around him, their telepathic presence stronger than ever. One of them, the largest, projected a vision into his mind. "This is why we are frozen. This is why we guard it. We were never meant to fight you, we were meant to hold it." This weapon was built eons ago by a civilization long vanished, designed to destroy planets as easily as a child crushes glass. When our kind learned its purpose, we sacrificed ourselves to imprison it, locking ourselves in ice to prevent its release. Ethan staggered backward, processing the revelation. The dragons hadn't just survived, they had chosen self-imposed imprisonment to protect the galaxy. The scope of their sacrifice and intelligence dwarfed anything he had ever known. And now, with the cosmic threat approaching, that ancient balance was unraveling. He looked closer at the technology surrounding the weapon. Strange panels, semi-organic conduits, and glowing glyphs seemed almost alive. They pulsed with a rhythm, responding to the dragon's energy, as if the vault itself recognized their presence. Ethan realized that activating or interacting with this technology would not be simple. A single mistake could trigger the weapon, releasing a force that even the dragons could not contain. The dragons projected another warning into his mind. The seal weakens. Those who seek to harness the weapon approach. Time is short. You are the bridge between our kind and theirs. You must decide, aid us fully, or fail. Ethan swallowed hard. He had never considered himself a savior. He was a veteran, trained to follow orders and survive impossible odds. But this was beyond survival. This was stewardship of something no human had the right to wield. He crouched beside the weapon, careful not to touch anything prematurely. Symbols glowed brighter as he neared, responding to his proximity. Images flickered in his mind, star systems reduced to ashes, civilizations that had risen and fallen in moments, and dragons, frozen yet vigilant, holding back unimaginable destruction for millennia. Then came a sudden realization: the dragon's plea wasn't just for freedom. It was for guidance. They had sacrificed themselves, yes, but they had no choice left. Only Ethan could act now to navigate the technology safely, to awaken them without triggering catastrophe, and to prepare for the approaching threat. He looked up at the dragons, their massive forms emerging slowly from the ice. Eyes locked on him, they radiated trust and expectation. There was no turning back. Every decision from this point forward would shape the fate of the galaxy. Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had faced death countless times, but the weight of this responsibility was unprecedented. He understood now that the dragons had not just chosen him, they had trained him, in their own way, through instincts, survival, and the very trials that had shaped him as a veteran. The chamber hummed around him, alive with energy, pulsing with the rhythm of the dragon's frozen heartbeat. And as Ethan extended his hand toward the weapon, he felt the immense gravity of the moment, the past, present, and future converging. The dragon's fate, his own, and the survival of countless worlds depended on his next actions. The truth he had uncovered was staggering, almost unbearable. The dragons had not been frozen by accident. They had been guardians of the universe itself, and now, in this fragile moment, humanity, through him, had been called to act. Ethan's mind sharpened. Fear remained, but it was now tempered by clarity. He could see the path forward, fraught with danger, yes, but necessary. The dragons would awaken fully only if he acted with precision, courage, and understanding. And if he failed, the galaxy would burn. He exhaled, placing his gloved hands firmly on the icy floor near the dragon's massive chest. The hum intensified, resonating with the dragon's energy, syncing with his heartbeat. The frozen guardians were ready. The ancient technology awaited guidance. And Ethan Cross, veteran of countless battles, stood at the threshold of a choice that could save, or doom, everything. The hidden truth was revealed. And now, action was unavoidable. The icy chamber pulsed with life, and Ethan Cross felt it deep in his bones. The dragons had fully stirred now, their massive forms shimmering as ice melted away to reveal scales like fractured crystal, wings stretching wide enough to blot out the faint alien sun. Their energy hummed through the air, intertwining with the alien technology that surrounded the crystalline weapon at the chamber's core. The very room seemed alive, waiting, holding its breath. Ethan's heart raced. The visions of annihilation, the star systems reduced to molten shards, civilizations wiped from history, played over in his mind. The dragon's telepathic presence was insistent, almost urgent. Act now, or everything dies. He swallowed, gloved hands trembling slightly as he stepped closer to the weapon. The glyphs on the panels reacted to him, glowing brighter as if recognizing his presence, syncing with his own heartbeat. The power contained here was unimaginable, an ancient construct built eons ago to destroy entire star systems. He had studied enough alien warfare to know what this meant. One misstep, one careless touch, and the weapon would activate, obliterating everything around it. And yet, doing nothing wasn't an option. The dragon's thoughts filled his mind. They had been guardians for millennia, sacrificing themselves to keep this weapon sealed. But now, centuries later, the cosmic threat they had warned him about was arriving. A fleet, dark as void, hurtling toward this system, intent on harnessing the weapon. If the dragons remained frozen, the enemy would succeed. The galaxy would burn. Ethan's mind raced. Awaken the dragons fully and risk the destructive potential of their power, or keep them restrained and allow the weapon to fall into the wrong hands. There was no middle ground. No safety. Only impossible choices. The largest dragon, its eyes locked on him, projected a vision of the approaching enemy, humanoid forms, armored in black energy suits, wielding technology that rivaled the ancient weapon itself. Their ships blotted out stars as they entered orbit. Time was running out. Ethan took a deep breath. "All right," he whispered, voice steadying, though his chest heaved. "Let's do this." He placed his hands on the ice above the largest dragon's chest, pressing firmly. The dragon shivered, energy rippling outward. One by one, the other dragons stirred fully, breaking free from their frozen tombs with a sound that shook the chamber, a combination of roaring wind, cracking ice, and deep, resonant hums that vibrated through Ethan's bones. The dragons rose, wings spreading wide, tails lashing, claws flexing. And yet, they did not attack him. They waited, syncing their energy with his own, allowing him to guide the activation of the alien technology. Ethan focused on the glowing glyphs and conduits surrounding the weapon. He had no training for this, but instinct and clarity guided him. Hands moving carefully, he adjusted the panels, rerouted energy flows, and aligned the seals. The dragons responded instantly, their energy stabilizing the weapon, creating a controlled resonance that prevented it from unleashing its destructive force prematurely. Sweat poured down his face, heart pounding, as the enemy fleet entered orbit above the icy planet. Shadows of massive ships glimmered against the frozen horizon, their weapons charging, ready to seize the weapon for themselves. Not today, Ethan muttered, gripping the panels as a surge of energy pulsed from the weapon. The dragons roared, and the chamber shook violently. Energy rippled outward in waves, creating a protective barrier that spread across the planet's surface. The enemy fleet faltered, their senses overwhelmed by the sudden surge of ancient power. Ethan realized the truth: the dragons weren't just guardians of the weapon, they were its stabilizers. Without them, the weapon could not be controlled. With them awake and attuned to his guidance, its power could be contained, directed, and, if necessary, unleashed strategically. The enemy ships hesitated, and the dragons, synchronized with Ethan, responded with a display of raw, unrestrained power. Ice and energy coalesced around them, creating a storm of blinding force that tore through the approaching fleet, disarming their weapons and driving them back. The galaxy, for now, remained safe. Ethan sank to his knees, exhausted, as the dragon's eyes met his one last time. Gratitude, trust, and relief radiated from them. He had faced the impossible, acted with courage, and survived. And in doing so, he had upheld a legacy older than humanity itself, the legacy of the Guardians, the frozen dragons, and the weapon they had kept sealed for eons. For a moment, silence returned. The ice and alien technology pulsed softly, dragons hovering, wings tucked, eyes watchful. Ethan understood he had been chosen not because he was powerful, but because he could make the right choice when no one else could. The galaxy was safe, for now. But he knew this was only the beginning. Forces far older and more dangerous than he could imagine still roamed the stars, waiting for the next misstep. And he, Ethan Cross, had become more than a veteran. He had become a bridge between species, a guardian of secrets too vast for most minds to comprehend. He stood, taking in the full scale of the dragons around him, their energy humming like a living symphony. The frozen plea that had started this nightmare of wonder and fear was now replaced by silent respect. He had answered. And as he looked toward the horizon, where the enemy fleet had been pushed back into the void, Ethan Cross knew one thing with certainty: the universe had changed forever, and so had he.